Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, awakening, transformative planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Inspired Living, where we remind people to be inspired, inspire others, and inspire before we expire. And today's episode I've been looking forward to. We're going to be talking about end of life and the beauty that comes with end of life, but also living before we get to that point of end of life. So if you're joining us live through the global player, through OMTimes Radio or marclainhart.com, thank you so much. And sit back, grab a cup of coffee, a tea, get in some comfortable clothes, and really just be prepared to be inspired for this riveting, inspiring, tragic yet beautiful journey with our special guest today, author Richard S. Cohen, who is going to be sharing his book, The Smooth River, which was named one of by Kirkus Reviews as one of the best indie books of 2021, and it's really a heart-rending but informative end-of-life guide, and I'm looking forward to it because for those of you that listen to the show and have listened to the show over the last 7 seasons and have followed my work, you know that I have had 2 close family members go through end-of-life through terminal illness of brain cancer and multiple sclerosis, so I will be really listening to our guest today as an active listener like yourself, and not so much a host, because it really was very transformative and changed my life forever to be a part of that journey and watch those beautiful, gentlemen move into the spirit world. So with that, if you want to follow the show, you can always follow us on our social media pages. For Facebook, it's Inspired Living Radio and Podcast, and you can join it as it's a public group. So you just go to Facebook and you can post a question there. Enjoying now, we're over 2,000 followers from around the globe. So thank you to our inspired listeners for supporting the show and the work. You can also follow us at Twitter and Instagram under the handle Inspired for us. That's the number 4. And again, just another shout out to our inspired listeners who've been leaving reviews and getting some feedback for the shows, because we want to really, continue to make this a great show on Wednesdays here at OMTimes Radio. And just got notification from FeedSpot that we've now moved up another spot. So we are now ranked number 23 of the best 70 inspirational podcasts to listen to in 2022. And I know that there are thousands of podcasts out there, so very honored and humbled that we are being recognized by FeedSpot at number 23. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, if you miss the live show playing right now through the global player at OMTimes, you can always follow up on an encore show throughout the rest of the week. You can also go to wherever your favorite podcasting show is. Now we're streaming through several, from Spotify to iTunes to YouTube to iHeartRadio to Google Podcasts. The list goes on and on. So wherever you find your favorite podcast, you can find Inspired Living on that platform. And we're just excited that you're joining us to be inspired each and every week, which I think we could all use a little bit of inspiration with everything going on in the world. So without further ado, let me just read a little bit about Richard and his journey and his wife's journey, Marcia, and what they went through in this book. And then I'm going to let him do the rest of the talking. So on September 3rd, 2019, Richard's life changed forever. The president of a mergers and acquisitions firm specializing in healthcare, Richard could only bear witness as his wife, Marcia, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She died I don't like to use the word died. She transferred over. She passed over less than 6 months later on February 10th, 2020, a month after turning 68, still so young. And by then, Richard had the idea for a book. And The Smooth River was brought into manifestation, into my reality, to be talking to him today and talking about the book. And it demonstrates how to treat one's life as bigger and far more important than any medical condition, any tragedy, any setback of any kind. Richard was trained as a corporate lawyer. Richard arranged mergers and acquisitions for medical technology companies, and as an expert in navigating complex transactions, developing grounded creative solutions, and managing many professionals and personalities during stressful conditions, all of these skills were put to work on finding sanctuary, beauty, humor, and spirituality within cancer's decay, unencumbered by medical conviction, by having a deep respect for it and the clinicians who cared for his wife, Marcia. Richard has translated Marcia's ethos into a creative, personalized, and inspiring approach for dealing with terminal illness. Richard wrote The Smooth River not as a medical or art of dying well, quote unquote, but as a peer of the reader, a peer of those touched by serious illness or other major problems. The book's purpose is to help other people. So Richard, welcome to Inspired Living Radio, my friend. Like I said, I'm going to be listening to you talk about this as we talk about the book, because I have personally gone through this twice, and I'm sure it won't be my last time. But welcome to Inspired Living Radio.
Yep, Mark, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for shining a light on the world and all the work you do to inspire other people. If I might, a spoiler alert. This is, the book is meant to be inspirational. The subtitle of the book is entitled The Smooth River, Finding Inspiration and Exquisite Beauty During Terminal Illness. And we did find it. So if I might give you some background. So in the summer of 2019, Marcia, my wife, and I came back from a mind-blowing trip to the Middle East, being hosted by a Palestinian PhD mother of four in Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan, deep into Arab culture. We came back in the summer of 2019. Marcia experienced, unrelated to the trip, some stomach pain, which her GIs diagnosed as called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or whatever. Gave her some antibiotics that didn't work. 4 weeks later, the day after Labor Day 2019, September 3rd, Marcia was called in to take a CT scan, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer has no reliable diagnostics, so the vast majority of patients who are diagnosed with it find out about it only when it metastasizes, goes into other organs, and in that case, it's not operable. There's no surgery available, and the median life expectancy is 3 to 6 months. A word about my wife. Marcia was a pretty well-known public relations crisis management expert. She worked at a public relations firm called Rubenstein Associates, and she represented celebrities, famous athletes, corporations, nonprofits, universities, private schools in times of crisis. And what she did for them was always find calm within the storm, because she had to reduce very complicated material and thread it through a needle so that it resonated with the press and then the public. So after the diagnosis, Marcia and I spent 3 or 4 days in what is the conventional norm, bedlam, free fall, mental chaos. Our whole world was turned upside down. But about the 3rd or 4th day, when we started to see oncologists and saw the waiting room filled with people like us, we felt not alone, and we started to gain our bearings. So it took us 3 or 4 days, but then we reached a fork in the road. And I will say it's based upon Marcia's penchant for clarity and a straightforwardness and no spin or BS, but, wanting to take things as they are. So the fork in the road was, one way was to continue in, bedlam and mental turbulence and letting society control how we thought in terms of imbuing this experience as a sport or a battle and circumscribing it to, with those metaphors, whether our success or failure would be based on whether some medical treatment would work. That's a tunnel, and we found that to be, having blinders on. The other road that we took, the other fork, which we did take, was, we eventually called it Smooth River, was to be open to everything, understand that life is finite, understand truth and reality, that we are only put on earth here a short while, and was a bummer, to get this, no doubt about it. I'll call the diagnosis and maybe the illness, tragic, but Marcia did not want to see her life as tragic. Marcia wanted to see her life as full. It may be shortened, but we didn't want to proceed with blinders on. So what we did was we divided our world into a medical plan and a life plan. We did not forego or give up on any medical treatment. At that point, surgery not being available, all that's left for stage 4 pancreatic cancer are these heavy-duty, high-octane, chemos. So, we did all of that. We went off the charts and we did some investigational drugs prescribed by Marcia's oncologist, whereby I pinched Marcia in the thighs, in the stomach, and her arms and her legs to give her subcutaneous shots every morning and every night. And at some point after, the chemos failed, after, Marcia lived 160 days exactly, after the chemos failed, after maybe day 100 or so, I went and just, Google searching, and I found some guy named Joe Tippins who had a positive experience with terminal cancer, eating dog dewormers. These are anti-parasitic substances you can buy at Pet Value at retail stores that somehow had some positive impact on abdominal cancers. So I got the human form of that prescribed by our oncologist and working out the dosages with the CVS pharmacy, and we did all of that. So we did a full medical plan, and then I want to speak more about some elements of that, but encapsulating the medical plan was the life plan. So Mark, imagine, you get this diagnosis and you're given a life expectancy of 3 to 6 months. The doctors didn't tell us that, but you can read up on it. We hope for the best, but we also plan, for the worst. We plan for every eventuality. So our life plan, given Marcia's clarity, involved talking about everything. We dedicated, time in the afternoon, from like 4 to 6 o'clock, where we could have heart-rending conversations. Marcia can let loose, and having dedicated time and dedicated space allowed Marcia for the rest of the day to watch Netflix, read books, speak to her colleagues and friends and whatever. But we were very intentional about letting Marcia speak about everything. And she spoke about everything. What is it going to be like to die? What is it, the pain involved, etc. Part of our life plan also involved getting our heads above the cancer, taking walks along the water. We live in suburban New York. We took walks along the Hudson River and the Long Island Sound and little stream of Bronx River. And we tried to get out of the house every day. And then in addition to that, we did projects for other people. What we were trying to do, Mark, is get our heads above the cancer, create some normality as we were existing, before the diagnosis. And as I know you quote from other podcasts, Norman Peale's quote, change your thoughts and change the world, or the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. What we sought is agency over this. So even though we couldn't control the outcome, we could control our approach. We could control our proactivity on the medical plan, creating an event log and a careful list of prescriptions that we went over with our doctors the whole time. We could undertake these projects. In addition to that, the year before diagnosis, we bought a fixer of a house in Florida, so we got to take 2 trips down here near the water. So the bottom line is, by the time Marcia passed, we imposed exquisite beauty on the situation. I know this is going to sound very strange, but the closer we got to death, I have a hard time saying the word "to," Mark, so I've come to terms with it. So, but it's, by the time Marcia passed, or when Marcia passed, those were the most beautiful days in my life. Because the closer you get to the end, the more precious and exquisite you can see how life is. And what was perceptions or experiences that we overlook and we don't appoint any value to them in our normal everyday life. You talk about this because everything's a blur with the news and COVID and whatever. It's all we all have our issues. But when the end is approaching, every blade of grass, everything becomes, very vitally important. And I was watching Marcia's eyes as we walked or we ate candlelight dinners or whatever we did. And toward the end, when her metabolism enabled her only to move her eyes or suck ice chips on her final day, it was like she was watching the world for the first time, just, absorbing, inhaling, and hearing all the beauty around us. So my learning in this book is we don't have to wait until the end to understand that life is finite. These are all aphorisms, until it becomes real. But people can, my point in the book, it's very vital, is that life is finite. And there's a societal aversion to talking about end of life. Doctors avoid it. Society, as I said, applies metaphors of, sport or battle. You can beat the thing without but circumscribing the experience to the success or failure of a treatment versus, as you were saying in the beginning, treating your life as bigger than the cancer, valuing your life in its entirety and not judging it by the way we die, but by the entirety of the way we live. So in reality, I didn't, we were constantly told during Marcia's illness that by doctors and nurses that we were treating the experience in a far more uplifting way than the norm. And I didn't plan on writing a book until well after Marcia passed away, when doctors encouraged me to do so. And I went into these closed, curated affinity rooms on Facebook and other portals about stage 4 pancreatic cancer, terminal illness, loss of a spouse, all sorts of other medical, conditions. And I saw the turmoil that people faced. So a large part of this book, and frankly, Mark, I think it's a large part of your charge as well, is to encourage people not to avoid end of life, sweep it under the rug, as many people do, including doctors. They're notorious for this. Not all, but many. I cite many studies in the book about this. But being able to, softly, open up to the reality, even if we live full term, that life is finite. But sometimes, bad things happen to good people. And sometimes there are crimes and tragedies and suicides and all sorts of bad things that happen. And this is just part of the sweep of life. And this book encourages an eyes wide open approach, not succumbing to the cheerleaders in society that, rally us to, beat this or fight this. Because if you're doing that, you're going to squander critical time. You're going to forgo, beauty. You can be fighting and then, passing away, all wired up in an ICU. or just, frittering away, valuable time when you can make it exquisite. Anyway, I'm going to stop here a little bit, Mark. You let me talk. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no.
But, this is a large part of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, and just, for the listening audience. If you want to get the book, you can go to the website, smoothriver.org. That's where you can get it. You can get it also at the book on, where you get your favorite books online, digital, or in hard copy. And we're going to go to our first break, and I'm going to actually take us out with a quote, because I love to quote and about life and about river. And it's from one of my favorite artists that I love, who is Garth Brooks. And he says this: "A dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows, and it's a dreamer's just a vessel that must follow where it goes." We'll be back here in a few minutes with Inspired Living Radio and our special guest today, Richard S. Cohen, talking about his book, The Smooth River.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hello, listeners. We hope you're enjoying the shows here on OMTimes Radio. Marc Lainhart here, and host of Inspired Living Radio. And I'd like to invite you to my morning show of inspiration, encouragement, healing, motivations, transformations, and discovering that diamond within. Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, over on the Intuitive Prospector Facebook page and my YouTube channel, Soul Adventures. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Inspired Living Radio. Today we are talking about the Smooth River, and want to open up the second half of the show with Socrates that talks about death may be the greatest of all human blessings, and what Sigmund Freud referred to, the goal of all life is death. And as we're talking today, we're welcoming our guest to the show for the first time, Richard Cohen, in his book, The Smooth River, talking about sharing with us his wife, Marcia, who sounds like just a very passionate, driven woman when she was alive. She's not dead. She has just transitioned over, and she's very much alive, because I personally, Richard, believe that death is not the end. Death is just the beginning to a great adventure. I think it was John Lennon that said, "I don't fear death. It's like getting out of one car and getting into another." And when you realize that death is not the end, death is not to be feared, death is to be respected. And I have no doubt that Marcia is still taking those walks by the Hudson River, still getting out in nature with you, and again, is only ever a thought away. But thank you for sharing today with us, because that's all we have, right, is the present moment, and sharing and talking about the Smooth River. And one of the questions as we open up the second half here, Richard, is I want to talk to you about your bereavement and your grief, because grief is something that we carry after a loss of a loved one or watching. I know for me it was a different, my approach to your approach was much different, because I was much younger and it was my brother and father-in-law, and you felt like you were helpless and couldn't do anything. And that's 20 years ago. But you carry grief. Everybody would say, oh, it gets better over time, Mark, and really it hasn't. It becomes a part of you. And how has the Smooth River affected your grief, your bereavement? Because I always say it's very important to honor your grief through the power of mourning.
Yes, thanks for asking. Where does, relative to your points before the question, I have Marcia in me now. Okay, I describe in the book one of these late afternoon conversations. How am I going to die? She asked, and I explain in the book that I was going to be with her, all the time. She passed away in room 413 in Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville, New York, affiliated with New York Presbyterian, last 10 days of her life. And we made that room beautiful. There was candlelight. We played Broadway melodies softly. I described, we danced with our eyes, a lot of nonverbal conversation because she couldn't even talk. But as I describe in the book, even her last few metabolic steps, when she couldn't breathe anymore, I took her on, and I'm breathing for her. So she almost trained me for bereavement by her clarity, by discussing everything, leaving no subject unturned. She just wanted to know everything. Why hide it? She just wanted to know everything, and she wanted to make sure that her family and I and my two sons and daughter-in-law and grandkids were whole. So I had anticipatory fear of everything. I certainly had anticipatory fear of that last breath. But like so much of my fears, they didn't bear out in reality. I didn't know about it. I was, planning mentally about that, what it would be like after she crossed the divide. But it even though it was foreign, it felt natural to me. And, there's an acceptance, certainly of the patient. As the patient nears the end, their expectations, their biological mechanisms, their anxiety levels, everything dwindles down. So you're tired and you have to accept it. I think the problem is in accepting the end is with the survivors. So she did train me, greatly. And then, there was a funeral in the Jewish religion. The participants, the family members and friends and circles are to shovel the earth and rock on the coffin and not have, paid employees of the cemetery do it. And that too was an anticipatory fear that I had, that thump of rock and covering her up. But it didn't happen. I felt like I was back in room 413 because of this beauty that we imposed on the environment, on the entire experience. We wouldn't let any negative test. We wouldn't let any remark that somebody might be pitying us or looking down on us or anything like that. We wouldn't let anything taint our experience. So I do have a wound. I like my wound. Actually preparing for this podcast, I put on my Room 413 music, which is soft instrumental. I cried a little bit. I like it. We've realized while she was living, and I realize now that, we can let go. And it's like, diving into water. You're underwater for a little bit, but then you come to the surface. So it gives me some perspective. I like my wound greatly because I'm not overwhelmed by it. It's a motivator. It's a motivator for personal growth. Mark, may I read to you the last day of her life, or the last day or so? We did a project. It was Marcia's final wishes. May I read them to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this was based upon a document called 5 Wishes. I think it's called Aging with Dignity, a nonprofit that published it. It's a lovely document. It actually contains legal directives like a will and medical proxies and stuff like that, but in common sense lay language. We didn't use it for the legal documents, and I had it in my backpack and I forgot about it for weeks. A palliative medicine doctor, gave it to me weeks before. But for some reason, I took this out, and Marcia and I did what we always did. We took a precedent, and then we molded it to our circumstances. So I may cry now, but, this is, you asked me about bereavement, and so here's my roadmap. Okay, so these are her wishes. I wish my family and friends to know that I love them. I wish my colleagues to know how gratifying they made my life. I wish to be forgiven for times I may have hurt my family, friends, and others. I wish to have my family, friends, and others know that I forgive them for when they may have hurt me. I wish everyone to know that I have lived in peace and that I start my new journey in peace. I wish to live on in happy memories, humor and inspiration, not grief and sorrow. I wish everyone to remember me as I was before I became ill. I wish for my family, friends, and others to look at my passing as a time of personal growth. I wish for my family, friends, and others to carry on with strength and a higher purpose and not to sweat the small stuff. Thank you for helping me carry out my wishes. So, Mark, my marching orders
Beautiful.
are, are not to, I have posters. I'm looking at her, I made these collages for the Shiva. That's the morning period. And I have one I'm looking at now. And somehow her smile is energy for me, and I know there's a lot of sayings on this subject of looking at someone's passing sorrowfully, and with grief, or another way is gratitude for having known this person or having lived and had a 40-year relationship with this person. So it's not robotic. I have a wound. I never want to heal the wound. It's not overwhelming, but it's humbling and it's inspirational and it's lovely. I love my wound. And I can flick on the room 13 music or read quietly to myself what I just read to you. And it's a personal growth experience. It's everything you stand for. So it's this agency point that we need to go on and not be overwhelmed by, anything. We need to somehow muster the courage and strength to tend to things that we can control, and as the Serenity Prayer says, and accept things that we can't. And there's just get our heads above this experience to accept that this is all part of life.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're doing, Richard, is you're honoring your grief, or as Queen Elizabeth II always said, grief is the price we pay for love. And that is, when people say, how do you prove love? Love is proved through grief, honoring our grief, knowing that, you can look at her picture and she's a thought away. Everything is energy. She's smiling back at you. There's two quotes that really help me on the journey of dealing with grief, and I love the approach of it's kind of what my mentor always tells me is all my problems are irrelevant. It's how I deal and face my problems that gives you the greatest power and the greatest hope and the greatest inspiration. And death does leave a heartache that no one can heal. Love leaves a memory no one can steal. But also those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still missed, and very dear. And that just, as I started this journey of my own bereavement, which is 20 years later, right? It's just that you blink your eye and it's 20 years later. It just shows that life goes on, and it is like that smooth river, that you don't ever stand in the same river in the same place twice, because it's always flowing somewhere. And what's interesting to me, you've referenced your room 413. Did I hear that right? 413? That's actually the room that she transitioned?
It is holy space, yes.
Yeah, which interesting to me, because I look at the universe as the universe always talks to us, not with a big booming voice and not a vibration off a vocal cord, but through signs, symbols, synchronicity, synergy, numbers. And 413, you may know this, Richard, I don't know if you know this or not, but that actually breaks down in numerology to the number 8. And the number 8 is all about the journey. It's all about infinity, journey in, journey out. So when you said 413, the first thing that pops into my mind is, that's the number 8 of infinity. And if you know the 8, you turn it sideways, that's the infinity. But the spiritual message of that is all about journey in, journey out, or think of it like a smooth flowing river, going around the bend and coming back, going around the other bend and coming back. And is there a certain song that really stands out as we're going to be going to our second break here in just a few minutes, but is there a song that really stands out when you hear it? You know, when you were saying her words, it gave me the shivers. It made my hair stand up. We call that clairsentience, the ability to feel that energy. I got emotional. I got teary-eyed for you, and that's that means that you're alive, right? You feel that. That's palpable. But is there a song that really resonates that you have on that playlist?
Yeah. Mark, one thing, by the way, we changed those 5 wishes to 8. There are 8 wishes if you were counting. But thank you for the numerology. Thank you for the numerology and your quote before about, you know, the departed walking with us. I'm going to take it one step further. She's in me. Yeah. I've become Marciaized. Some enchanted evening was we met in, you know, across a crowded room. So, you know, it's not vocalized. It's just a lovely, soft melody. But they're all, you know, Broadway tunes. So it just brings back that, you know, magical, enchanting, you know, time and experience that we shouldn't have to wait until life's end to experience it. We don't have to wait until someone's sick. We can do it even in our 20s or 30s or younger at any time. And that's what you're all about. So in any event, the serenity of how we made 413 with the music and the candlelight and the softness, it was beautiful.
Yeah. And again, thank you for sharing. And just, I know our listeners are just, you know, gleaning a lot of this, and I know that I'm, you know, just to feel that energy of Marcia and the experience that you both went through, and your family, of course, because it's not just you and Marcia, it's your family and everybody. It's that ripple effect, right, that goes out and impacts all of us. And at the end of the day, we're all symbiotic connected. We're all at some point related and connected to one another. And you know, I'm just thinking of Jim Morrison, where he talked about no one gets out of here alive. So we're all heading to the same destination. We're just walking each other home, you know, for those of us that are left here. Right. And, you know, I always kind of go with what George Bernard Shaw, when he talked about, I want to be all used up when I die. And that's, you know, that's for those of us that have had this experience. You do look at your own life. You look at the journey, and you really start to realize that time is your greatest commodity, and you want to do as much as you can and experience good and bad, happy and sad, all that life has to offer. Because I want to be all used up whenever my time comes and I transition. I want to know that I lived, and I just want to say thank you for doing that. So we're going to go to our final break, and when we come back, Richard, I have a few more questions that I want to just dive into, because I want to talk about the Smooth River approach to, you know, maybe it's not terminal illness, maybe it's a sudden death or a crime. I know my family is victims of violent crime because my other brother was murdered in the same week that my older brother was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So I want to get that approach for Smooth River, or, you know, maybe it's suicide. A lot of suicides happening right now, or other tragic circumstances. So when we come back from our second break, we're going to continue to talk about the Smooth River with our special guest today, Richard Cohen, who is sharing his journey of the Smooth River and his amazing, beautiful wife, Marcia. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us? the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
If I could be you.
And you could be me.
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way.
To get inside.
Each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Many people die at 25 and aren't buried until they're 75. That's from the great Benjamin Franklin. And boy, I can relate. I was 27 when terminal illness came to my doorstep with my brother and my father-in-law. And I hope to, be at 75 and beyond. But that quote really rings true for today's show, as we're welcoming back Richard S. Cohen in his book, The Smooth River, and his journey of working through end of life, but in a way that's inspirational, transformative, beautiful, and his wife, Marcia, passing into spirit, but still very much a part of his life today, and even part of this radio show as we are talking about the Smooth River. And Richard, I wanted to talk about the approach to not just terminal illness and more about sudden deaths or suicides or victims of violent crimes in today's world, because we have there's a lot going on in our world. How can for those that want to get the book and read the book, how can this be applied for non-medical circumstances, like even just a jolt in life? And we've all been jolted from this pandemic, loss of a relationship or a job or a career. How would Smooth River apply to all those different areas?
Yeah. I was exceedingly aware in writing the book that the intention was to help other people. It was not written as a vanity thing or a memoir or a biography. We needed the flesh of the 160-day experience to explain a case study of crisis and how we imposed beauty, how we tamed the waters and made them calm, to draw some important life lessons. So these lessons apply to all hits or tumultuous circumstances. I want to be very humble right now. I am part of this fraternity or group of people who have had setbacks, and I don't want to come across as an expert to everybody or maybe even anybody. I don't want to come across like we having all the answers, but I think there's some soft gleanings of universal quality that we derived that are worthwhile and applicable to sudden deaths and other circumstances. I think the major point is this decision, this seminal, pivotal decision to treat one's life in its entirety as more important than the way they may pass, or a divorce, or loss of job, or other setback. Our lives are bigger. I can't speak to the grief of a child committing suicide. I mean, I can empathize and I visualize it. We've had friends who've experienced this, so I don't want to come across as a know-it-all at all. But I do want to say the Smooth River mentality, the lens, the approach, the perspective is, I think it calls for valuing the life, not having the way one passes as eclipsing or defining the life. The life is beautiful, whatever happened afterward or was the cause of the person's demise. So what we did, part of our projects and life plan was to help other people, to do some projects helping other people. So by helping other people, it made feel good about ourselves. Now, when someone passes by way of suicide or crime or suddenly, we're not talking about the patient anymore. We're talking about their loved ones. So there's the possibility of creating some legacy projects. It doesn't have to be costly. It doesn't have to have great tangibility to it. But somehow, creating some stakes in the ground figuratively or literally, a bench, a tree, or, some donation or a walk or, or a website, somehow, valuing, for lack of a better word, or honoring is a better word. I was going to say celebrating, but honoring the party, the person who has passed, and have that website or legacy or project endure, for other people, endure as with Marcia and me, for me, I live and breathe for her now. I don't mean that in any supernatural way. It's just that I know how she thinks and she keeps me balanced. So I think the Smooth River approach could apply to, loved ones, even though they don't have the experience of their, the decedent around them now. But I think it's a way of looking at their passing, their legacy, their life, and not having it eclipsed by the way they die. Same would apply to a divorce or loss of a job. And, Mark, you speak about this every week, that we have to have, perspective, and we can't succumb to life's hits. That doesn't mean we're robots. That doesn't mean we're on, automatic. No, we're going to get pain. We're going to get knocked down. We're going to get knocked down a lot. But somehow there's a value when we, look at the sky, look at the water, see our loved one in nature, and all of us, in us. And there's value in going on. As Marcia's wishes provide, she wanted her passing to be a growth experience. So that might apply, to everybody. And even, a non-medical event is a growth experience. Just professionally, I've had a lot of setbacks professionally. I love people with setbacks. They learn and they develop scar tissue. They develop, agency and some empowerment and proactivity to not only be humbled by their own experience, but be able to deal with, problems in the future, and makes them more compassionate overall.
I like that. And I would say it's okay to use the word to have celebration, because a lot of countries outside the United States still celebrate their loved ones. I'm thinking Day of the Dead in Mexico. I'm thinking the movie Coco, where, every year the Japanese culture, they celebrate the honor of having that relationship and experience, good, bad, happy, sad, with that person that's now in the spirit world. And so I use celebration all the time, a reunion, a celebration, because it is a celebration, and it will be when we see them again, because we will see Marcia again, we will see our loved ones again, and that's going to be called for a great celebration. And if anything that I learned from Winnie the Pooh talked about, rivers know this: there is no hurry, we shall get there someday. That's kind of flashing into my mind from Winnie the Pooh, and that's what life is. We'll get to where we're going, and let's, hope to make it a smooth river along the way. But you're right, those setbacks or those breakdowns create breakthroughs. I find that some of the most inspirational people that I have interviewed over the last few seasons of Inspired Living Radio are those that have suffered traumatically, but still somehow find hope and inspiration and moving forward throughout the day. And that gives me inspiration, and that gives me hope. And it's hard for me to get sad with death and dying anymore, because I see it from such a different perspective. But I think that, for this book, for anybody out there listening to today's show, check out the book. It's a guide for whatever you're going through, whether it's terminal illness or just a change, because that's the one thing in life that's consistent, is change, right? And what would you, for the readers that do get the book, Richard, what would be some of the takeaways that you would like readers to get from your manifestation of this book into their reality?
Well, not in priority order, but I did hope to demystify this contracted, terminal, short-lived experience. And it's not just a philosophical, book as we covered here, and there's hard-hitting practicalities in this book that we learned on the fly, like pain management. And we only learned after day 120 that Marcia was under-medicated, and there's a careful balance between immediate release opioids, which are fine during cancer, and time release opioids. So pain management. And there's a lot of other practicalities, including the benefits of palliative medicine that deals with the patient, the entire patient, and not just the thing. And I gently coax or hope to persuade doctors to treat the entire patient and not just, the medical condition. Takeaways that this is your life. And whatever besets you, you have a choice. You could be, overwhelmed and get on a treadmill and do the expectations of society to, run. Atul Gawande calls it ODTAA, one damn thing after another. Or you could take a wider panoramic approach and not forgo any treatment, but just understand that it may not work, and that you don't have to grade your life based on negative tests or positive tests. Just the acceptance of life. That I think is the most important takeaway, because societally we sweep it under the rug. We don't talk about it. Doctors don't talk about it. There's surprises at the end when treatments don't work. Patients are sent on, with chemo or surgical or other treatments that do more harm than good, just because we have to do something. So one takeaway is to have a wider perspective. Value your entire life. This is it. This is it. And there are ways. We found ways, but other people can find their own ways, maybe applying some Smooth River lessons, but adapting it to their own circumstances of imposing beauty. This is it, and we're going to make the best of our circumstances, and whatever it is. We had, music and candlelight dinners and Netflix and walks along the river. It may be other things to other people, but whatever is, lights you up, whatever brings you happiness, this is the time to do it. And again, the value of doing good for other people and normalizing your life and not, living in fear or, helter-skelter or free fall, because the inevitable will be happening. It will be happening to all of us. Mm-hmm. Another takeaway, sorry for not being so linear on bullet points here, but another takeaway is...
No worries.
Yeah. Okay. Another takeaway is just it's an aphorism. It's a concept. It's just a saying, of appreciating every day, the preciousness of our loved ones, hugging your loved ones and just, living life in the moment. These are concepts until they become real. They need not be concepts. We can make them real now, and, turn off the motors, appreciate every day, the value of relationships and other people. It's a way to make life beautiful. So this happened under exigent circumstances for us, 160 days with, practical steps and some philosophical learnings that we developed. But there's applicability to all of life. I don't want to sound like a wide-ranging philosopher, but, you do speak about this, Mark, in other contexts, and it's this developing a softer, wider, wide-angle, clear-headed approach to life versus mechanically applying, conducting your life as a reflex without thinking about it. It's mindfulness.
Yeah, and it's being present, mindfulness to the present, because that's all that you have is the right now. What we're discussing, what we're sharing, which we're inspiring, because that's what this show is about. And I was thinking when you were saying that about Steve Jobs before he passed, he talked about remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. And when he transferred over the words that came out of his mouth were beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And so when you can look at it that way and know that we are heading to a beautiful place, it makes all the difference in the world. And again, Richard, I want to thank you for being on Inspired Living and just sharing your journey and Marcia's journey, who is still very much alive. And I personally believe in after-death communications, ADCs. And I'm sure that you'll have many interactions with when we're done with this show and throughout the week and the rest of your life, because she is a part of you. She's around you. She's within you. And for our listeners out there, if you want to get the book, which I highly recommend, go to smoothriver.org. It's been an honor to have you. And thank you so much, Richard, for inspiring us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me and all the great work you do.
Thank you so much, my friend. And as we close out today's show, I just want to leave you with a quote that I have found very inspiring, and it's from Helen Keller. "Death is no more than passing from one room into another, but there's a difference for me, because in that other room, I shall be able to see." Have a great rest of your day. Be kind, caring, and compassionate. Until our next soul adventure together, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover the diamond within.